Thank you so much for reminding me. Okay, so on vNext, we did make an announcement earlier, I think it was last week, about how we want to take forward the vNext development process. We just going back to that announcement, we know that the vNext code base has potentially significant importance, and there's a lot of development effort that continues to be invested in it, in particular by VitsaWorks. And in order to make sure that the vNext code base meets the requirements of the Mojaloop community as a whole, we've decided to appoint a non-technical transition manager. This person will take on a product management role specifically for vNext, with the aim of helping to shepherd its development from beta to release candidate. That person we expect to be in post in the next couple of weeks. But as I said, the transition manager is a non-technical role, so they'll be supported by a technical workstream lead responsible for engaging with the development community to focus and coordinate efforts in the continuing development of vNext. So James Bush, our engineering director, has kindly agreed to take on this role, and we think that the combination of James plus the new transition manager will put us in a good place for getting vNext up to release candidate and in a smooth and timely manner. James, I know that you wanted to say a few words about this, so maybe I can hand over to you.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I do have a few short slides.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Just find the right thing to share. I think that's the right thing to share. You should see a slide with vNext beta assessment progress.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, just to go over a bit of history, recent history. I think everybody on the call, people in the Mojaloop community, will know most of the history of the vNext project up to now. But recently, on the 17th of December, beta release tag was made by the vNext team. Since then, a number of test deployments have been made in AWS by the foundation. The first couple of times we tried to do that, we used a VM that was too small, so we had to iterate a few times to find a suitable size of VM to run the full stack. We shared the assessment framework that we're using with the community on the 4th of Jan this year. Since then, we've received feedback from the community, which has been integrated into that framework. There's been a number of NFRs added to the framework as well since the alpha release review was conducted. Those are based on the Mojaloop invariants, which you'll find in the DA project. If you want to find out what the invariants are all about, you can go and have a read there, or reach out to me and I can point you at the documentation. And the requirements, as we move forward towards a place where we think about a release candidate for the vNext code base, the requirements are becoming more stringent and more complete in terms of matching the expectations given the feature completeness and functionality of the vNow code base. So hopefully that won't be a surprise to anybody. Current status of the review. 2 contributors in the community, thank you very much, have reviewed against the framework, and that feedback has been received. Mojaloop Foundation staff, sorry, that should say MLF. Yeah, my bad, the typo there. We're continuing to review against that framework. That's turned out to be quite a time-consuming and lengthy process. There's quite a large surface area now And as I said, the requirements are becoming more stringent, so it's requiring more effort on our part. However, in the meantime, as Paul mentioned, BitsOfWorks community members are continuing to contribute to the development, focused on bug fixes at this point. However, as the review is progressing, we are generating items to drop into the backlog, which will be added while the review is complete. So we're not going to hold up the forward movement, the forward momentum on the vNext project. As Paul mentioned, I am lucky enough to have been appointed as an interim workstream lead till such time as our transition manager starts. When that occurs,
you will carry on in that role though. The workstream lead. Sorry, James, you're not getting away with it.
Yeah, okay. As Paul says, I'm being encouraged to retain that role. So the presentation of the report we were targeting for the end of Jan, but the smart ones among you will notice that today is the last day of Jan and we're not going to be able to present the report today. So it's going to slip into February. We hope not by much, but yeah, just please bear with us. As I say, forward momentum is not being held up. The backlog is being actively maintained at the moment. That's everything I have to say about vNext right now. Does anybody have any questions? Apologies if anyone's got their hand up. I can't see that.
There are no hands up. Everybody is content.
No hands up. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. If anybody does have any questions as time goes by, please feel free to reach out to me. There is a Slack channel, as you'll see, vNext Beta Review, specifically for the view. There's also another channel, public channel called the vNext-build. I'll just add that here. So just lowercase. So please reach out to us on Slack if you have any questions about progress or anything at all. Thank you very much. Back over to you then, Paul.
Okay, thanks, James. Unless anyone has any questions that haven't surfaced so far, we'll move on. The next item we wanted to talk about today was workstream reporting. We have felt that there is a tendency, I'm not trying to suggest that people are trying to work out without scrutiny, but there is a tendency for people to work, a growing tendency for people to work in silos more and more. People are not necessarily publicizing everything that they're doing, not because of they want to hide anything. It's just they just tell the people that they know are interested. We want to push back a little on that and encourage more openness. So we want to use the community central site, for example. If I just bring up the screen, excuse me a second. There it is. Right, we want to use this community central site. This is the PI23 workstreams page, and here there is a bunch of detail for each workstream. We want to expand on this more. We want to make it more active. We want to hand control of the input on these lines over to workstream leads, and to encourage workstream leads to use Community Central as the principal contact point. And we will, rather than just saying, oh, please do this, and then forgetting about it till the next convening, we will actually be actively encouraging people to update these pages, and in particular around meeting details, how to get involved, when, where, and the link to the GitHub, for example, and ideally also separate pages for each work stream to provide more detail. We're still working on these ideas. We'll present more about this at the convening, but we're just trying to make everything a little more open, rather than people working in silos, which I think has been an emerging trend. James, did you want to say anything about this? Because I know you were one of the drivers of this.
Well, I think you've mostly covered everything there, Paul. My desire is for us to have a very accessible public place where anybody can come, understand the work streams that are currently running, and immediately, without having to do many clicks or much navigation, find out when the regular calls are happening and what details they might need to join those calls, which Slack channels to go and look at. Just a one-stop shop for people to participate in the community in a bit more of an obvious and open way, rather than having to ask too many questions in Slack and get sent around the houses too much.
Yeah. Yes. So it's not, so take away the dependence on knowing people and just provide a central resource where anyone can pick up and get themselves up to date on the progress of the work stream. Yeah.
There is a calendar currently, a public calendar that is supposed to have all the community call events on it, but I suspect that workstream leads, being busy people, don't have an awful lot of time to maintain that, and some people don't even know it exists or where to find it. So we're definitely trying to focus on making that more accessible, more obvious.
Yes, you're right. We've never really highlighted that. I mean, it's never been a secret that there's a calendar, but you do kind of have to know about it to access it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should definitely be publicizing that one. Okay, thank you, James. Moving on, I want to go back to our presentation. No, that's the wrong one. There we are. And we're now going to move on to the workstream presentations, which was the whole point of this call in the end. This is the proposed sequence of presentations. We're going to start with FX because I know some of the FX teams have another call soon, so they need to go. The FX one is a little more complex because there's the overview work stream, which is being hosted, I suppose you'd call it, by Michael. And then we have implementation work streams for both the vNow and the vNext code bases, which are functionally equivalent, but operate against a different infrastructure. We then have on-premise, participation, etc., etc. You can all read. Is there anybody here, any workstream lead, who feels they will not be able to present according to this timetable? If we're all content with that timetable. Sorry, Paul, were you about to say something?
Yeah. Could I do the Mojaloop integration sooner?
Sure, we can move that up. So we move it in there, so we give James a break, and you get a break from FX. Is that okay?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. Fine. Right. Well, let's move straight on to the presentations, and the first one, I think, will be introduced by Michael Richards, and it's FX.
Yes, I don't have a presentation, I'm afraid. However, my report is as follows. We have now got an initial implementation in the vNow code base of the majority of functionality that's required to support currency conversion. I'm not sure quite whether it's actually been delivered to as a candidate for release yet. Probably it hasn't, but we certainly have a proof of concept which has been shown to potential customers, showing how it works. It is a proof of concept at the moment. It lacks some areas that will be necessary to go for production. In particular, I think it lacks negative use cases It's designed to succeed, as these things mostly are, and we haven't, I think, put in all of the ways in which things could go wrong. The other area which is lacking at the moment is that it doesn't support the advertisement of currency conversion services via the scheme. So it basically assumes a single currency converter who can be directly accessed by the DFSP. So we will need, before the end of this PI, to add functionality which will enable currency conversion entities, foreign exchange providers, to register themselves with the Mojaloop scheme, and will allow DFSPs to request the Mojaloop scheme to provide them with a list of people, of entities that provide currency conversion services, either in general or for particular currency conversion pairs. So that, I think, those are the two main areas where we will be concentrating our efforts over the course of over the course of the rest of this PI. I don't think there's anything else I have to add on that. I know that the ThitserWorks team have started work on a vNext version of the same thing, and the materials that have been generated by the vNow team, I think, have been made available to them. Certainly the documentation that I have has all been made available to them, so I'm looking forward to hearing from them how they're getting on. And I think that's all I have to say. So, Paul, I don't know whether it's you or VJ to whom I should hand over to talk about how the vNow team have been doing things. Probably it's you, since I see VJ is not on the call.
Yes. Yeah, it's probably me. I can't say I've prepared too much for this either. But I do have the previous presentation that we put in place, which really summarizes the work that the POC did. Which would it be appropriate to go through that quickly, Paul?
Yes, I think it will.
I do think that Michael's summary was very succinct and to the point, so maybe that's enough. But I'm happy to present that.
No, please present, because I want everyone to understand better what has been done.
Okay. Can you see that screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we did write up a blog summarizing the work that we did and why we think it's important, and that this is a native Forex implementation into Mojaloop. If you've been around here long enough, you'll know that we have had previous Forex integrations which weren't native, and I think we outlined exactly why we think the native one is important and critical, and this POC was to demonstrate the functioning of that native functionality. So there's the epic. So this has been done in the open source. We've got an epic, and then we've got some sort of a set of test cases that we tested against. I think we can share this presentation afterwards. If people are interested, they can follow these links to get more of the details.
Presumably it'll be in the repo, so people can visit it there.
Yes, no, yeah, all of these are Mojaloop repos, so just a search will find them. But if you are struggling to find them, please come to me. That's also okay. I'll point you in the right direction. Okay, so not only did this POC in fact show the concepts working in the switch, but we also had an example Kubernetes deployment instruction based on Helm, and that's also available, and there's a public repo for that. And you can follow this link or get access to it by reaching out to me. It is a public repo. Sorry, I'm looking sideways because I'm presenting to the side, which is maybe not a good idea. Let me try. So let me summarize quickly what was included in the POC. So we have we made changes to the discovery core. Well, the first, I think, important part of this POC is that we introducing a new way of participating in the Mojaloop scheme, and this is as an FXP. So this is a slightly different role because it's not directly involved in a transfer, yet it provides the foreign exchange for a transfer, in support of a transfer. So so we have a new participant type, and essentially the sender works only in their local currency, the receiver in the target currency, the receiver DFSPs. And the FXP is the one entity that works in both of those currencies. So there were some changes in discovery. Exactly, the list of supported currencies needs to be communicated during the discovery phase so that the sender DFSP can recognize that there is an incompatibility with the supported currencies and therefore initiate the Forex flows. Then in the agreements phase, there are in fact two underlying transfers in a Forex transaction. And resultantly, there's two sets of agreements that need to be made. The traditional one is between the sender and the DFSP. That remains the same, although now it's in different currencies. But an agreement needs to be reached between in the PSC. We did it between the payer DFSP and the foreign exchange provider, where they come to agreement of terms that includes creating the sort of capital required in the foreign exchange in the target currency to really fund the transfer. So that is done. And then finally in transfers, there are in fact now two transfers, but the critical reason why this native implementation is so important is that the committing of those transfers happens simultaneously. So they are committed at the same time. In other words, they both pass or fail. And that is a critical part in this native design. So the POC was put together. VJ did do a nice demonstration of that. We in our blog that we've referenced right in the beginning, we do have some recordings of that in detail, so you can go and catch up with that later. So next steps in the work stream is we want to extend this POC to include the FX quotes. If you noticed, the FX quote is not going through the Mojaloop, and it's an easy change to make it go through Mojaloop. We have not done that yet. And then the services functionality in Mojaloop, and that would essentially enable multiple FXPs to register themselves on Mojaloop and sort of provide their services to all DFSPs who are interested in. And I think that's my update. Yeah. The other piece of work that needs to occur is hardening of the functionality. We're calling it hardening. The stories are labeled hardening as we create them on the GitHub boards. And what we mean by that is we are adding in the negative test cases and checking to show that all standards are met, so that it's really about getting the code changes ready so that they can be merged into master and included in the production release. And that's all.
Yeah, that's great, Paul. Can I ask a question before anyone else does?
Sure.
On this side, agreement, the changes here are clearly made in Payment Manager.
Oh,
So
I did not include that. Absolutely. That's a big chunk of the work that we did is, in fact, the integrations. This is an end-to-end test. So it's from an integrated standpoint we tested the integrations from a payer, a sender DFSP, a receiver DFSP, and an FXP. So we built in the SDK scheme adapter functionality to support integrations and then tested that integration. Michael.
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to add to that one of the design decisions that we made quite early on in this process was to say we shouldn't force DFSPs to know about currency conversion if they don't want to. And that therefore one of the things we would provide as part of this development was, as Paul says, functionality in Payment Manager to provide a standard way of allowing DFSPs to obtain currency conversion without, as it were, even necessarily needing to know that it had been obtained.
Yeah, so I can say that the payer integration and the payee integration to make this work changes very marginally or not at all, depending on the level of integration for Forex flows that you require. So minimal integration changes. So in other words, existing integrations that have been built can either be extended or can remain the same and be able to initiate or receive a Forex payment.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that the work that the vNow team have done on Payment Manager, of course, should be immediately reusable by the vNext team, because the vNext team should, I mean, obviously, will be consuming the APIs in the same way, and therefore the Payment Manager work should be completely reusable across the two.
Yes, I was going to make it make an even stronger point that by the time the Payment Manager, if we go back to the agreement phase slide, once the quotes are actually going via Mojaloop, we are then left with a Payment Manager for the sender and a Payment Manager for the FXP, which are effectively finalized and are then directly usable for either the vNow implementation or the vNext implementation. There is no functional change because everything is finalized according to the APIs that have already been agreed. Is that a fair statement?
Completely fair.
Yeah. Okay,
and,
good.
And
so this has actually saved the vNext FX workstream work because they haven't had to make the changes in Payment Manager.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that the Payment Manager sort of integration work, in fact, speaks the FSP IOP FX quotes language. So at the moment we've got that arrow pointing between the sender DFSP and the FXP. But it's speaking the language of Mojaloop. So redirecting those arrows to Mojaloop is a relatively small step.
Your view is that'll be done by the time of the end of the PI.
I certainly hope so.
That's good.
Two shakes of the land.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to ask any questions of Paul? No, in that case, with the night of the time, we'll move quickly on. And would somebody from the vNext team like to talk about the work on FX?
Yeah, well, thank you.
Hi, Zarchi.
Share my screen.
Yeah.
I hope the presentation is good with everyone.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the API ticket that we are working on our test. And the main use case that we will be focusing on is currently right now is the pay at DFSP performing the currency conversion. So for the changes in these phases, the first stages we are focusing is the discovery phase and the currency phase. So in the discovery phase, there's changes in FSP IOP to support the currencies, but to return the supported currencies to define that this transition is needed for the conversion or not. So there we have then the changes on the that third parties response to we modify that to return the information about the currencies in which the payees DFSB can receive funds. And this impact the account lookup and discovery PC in VNext architecture. And for the second phase, for the currency conversion phase, we put this get services as a currency conversion phase according to the sequence diagram, since this is the initial step of the conversion to get the services like the FXB. Like according to the specification, this new FXB API get services allows the participant to update the list of DFSB in the scheme who provides the currency conversion services. So these changes will be made, and for that, this has impact on the account lookup and discovery phase along with the participant lifecycle management PC because of adding new participant email in the context of the participant on the table. And also we are planning on that there will be a changes in UI for to support that FXB, but there's some after our last meeting internal discussion, there are some changes in the UI as well. Like we need to clarify or we need to do an impact analysis more on the on which part of the UI will be changing. So this need to be defined more. For the agreement and transfer phase, the analysis is still in progress. So we can only define that the changes will be in first the IOP services and in existing PC. Like for the agreement phase, there will be a coding and column balances phase, and the transfer phase there will be settlements and so on. So and of course adding a new currency conversion PC, which in the next there's already an existing forest PC, so we will be using that to support that FXB API. And yeah, these are the phases we will be working on, but the things, the work that we have started working is on discovery phase and the half of the currency conversion phase. And I've added a link here so that the update will be available to all of the members. So there's an Excel sheet in here, so you can.
We can even connect direct. We'll be able to check whether it's a proper. Yeah.
Sorry, carry on, Sophia.
Yeah. So there's an Excel sheet in here. So it will be the list of things that we will be doing in this focus use case. So it has the text and also the tickets that are available in GitHub. So it has the details in there. So you can also see the updates daily on, or like see the updates on the Excel sheet. So for the discovery phase, just like we have mentioned, these are the I've added in here the backlog tickets that the team is currently working on. And for the discovery phase, it was expected to be done on this month, January. We are now in testing phases of the LCC, between the LCC and the changes itself. So is currently now in testing process. Maybe it will be probably done in 1 day or two. So yeah, these are the after the discovery phases, the currency phase backlogs are also ready. But for this, there will be some minor changes depending on the last discussion. But we will accommodate that in the existing ticket. And for this one, the team is working in parallel with the discovery phase. So there will be some discussions ongoing on how to add this participant and we participate in game.
Hmm.
This is the high level architecture, and in here you see that the most of the PCs are embedded, and the new FXP this is the currency conversion PCs will be added in here as well. And for the timeline wise, this is the estimated timeline. We are trying to complete this before the estimated timeline. However, depending on the current impact analysis on the VNX code base, and the majority of the tasks seems to be embedded to support the FX new API. So this is the timeline that we think will need to be completely focused parts. So at the end of the PI, this PI March, I think we will be on the agreement phase. But so yeah, that's for currently the impact analysis is still not done, so we can only update. We have only these updates.
Okay. Now, are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It does seem quite an optimistic timeline, but you are putting a lot of effort into it, so it's pleasing to see. Does anyone have any comments? Karim?
Hi. Yeah, I recall like a few weeks back, maybe last week, I think we had a discussion around this cross-currency transfers. It was in the context of merchant payments.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, because we discussed that there is currently, whenever an alias is not resolved by a local oracle, it can mean two things: that either that alias does not belong to any DFSP, the customer has put a wrong alias, or that alias actually belongs to some other DFSP. So those changes, like in the context of cross-currency transfer, I'm assuming those will be also covered in this.
That'll be in a next phase beyond this. I suspect we need to get the FX up and running first, and then there's the cross scheme alias resolution will need to come after that, I feel.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to add to that, Paul, this is, in my mind, a question about cross scheme and not a question about cross currency.
Exactly. The cross currency
although,
stuff comes, well, not for free, but it's done.
Well, yeah, so we kind of tend to think of these things as being the same as each other, but in fact, they're not.
Yeah.
We certainly have, I mean, Mawali was a single scheme which had currency conversion in it. And it's certainly possible to imagine multiple schemes which use the same currency. For instance, in jurisdictions where only certain kinds of institution are allowed to join certain schemes. And in both those cases, you can see that there would be a split between the cross-scheme requirements and the cross-currency requirements. So my answer is we are doing some thinking, Karim, about how cross-scheme stuff will work, because we need to have it for the COMESA project. And watch this space. We will be bringing something up.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Karim. And that is a recurring theme, the difference between cross-border and FX. And we do need clarity on that. Okay, thank you. Moving on then, our next presentation is about on-premise deployments, and it is James.
Thanks again, Paul. I have another deck to share. Bear with me. Support for on-prem. You can see another deck.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a summary of progress since the PI began, as a quick reminder for everybody, the workstream objective is to design and build infrastructure as code, ISC, to make it easy for folks to deploy production quality Mojoloops in an on-prem own data center scenario. We have made some pretty good progress over the previous couple of months. We have a couple of bare metal Mojaloop installations up and running. One in Rwanda, thanks to the wide-in guys, and another one in the Infotex test lab. We now have some pretty good documentation that walks through the steps necessary to do this. That is published in the on-prem GitHub repo, if anybody wants to go there and have a look. Thanks to Oscar Cobart and David Fry of Infotex for producing that documentation. That's been passed over to the folks in Rwanda, who will be testing that and giving us feedback on the process, so we can iterate the documentation and improve any steps that we might need to. We do have a bit of a roadblock at the moment. We have some resource limitations. There is a short-term issue that we need to resolve, but before I get there, I'll just remind everybody about where we are, how we came to be where we are. Most of the Mojaloop development happens in cloud because it's convenient and cost-effective for small, short-lived operations, and if your business doesn't want to invest or spend money in the hardware and people needed to run a data center, if you don't have any hard regulatory requirements for doing that, then cloud makes a lot of sense. So most of Mojaloop development, and certainly the first few Mojaloop deployments were all in cloud, but most of the current adopters who are in the community and are looking to use Mojaloop, they have much harder regulatory environments to operate in. Data sovereignty is an issue for them. So they are focusing on on-prem. So the Mojaloop community has got together and put a considerable amount of effort into this work stream to make that possible, as simple and cheap and easy as possible, while maintaining all the great security necessary for self-hosted solutions, for us to provide tools to make that process as reliable as possible. So as a quick recap of the objectives of the workstream, we don't want to use any license fee technology in the tool set, and we want folks to be able to start small and grow their deployments to cope with higher traffic demands. Again, a reminder that we need to facilitate that carrier grade security, reliability, and resilience. Mojaloop is intended to be national scale financial infrastructure, part of national scale financial infrastructure. So it has to tick all those boxes. There's a great deal of knowledge in the markets that we're engaged in, who are used to running on-prem data centers. So we want to keep the learning curve as shallow as possible for them, where they might be using patterns and techniques that have been around for a long time. We want to enable them to keep using those patterns that they're comfortable with, that they know and trust. So far in PI23, the highlights are thanks to our adopter in Rwanda and their SI wide-in and our switch. Shout out to those guys. Thank you for the work you've been doing. Fantastic progress so far. some very talented people working on that project in Rwanda. We have a successful Kairos cluster installation with Mojaloop software installed on top of it. At this stage, using the Helm install. But just recently, last week, I think the revised documentation with the full IAC support for that was released to those. So we're hoping they'll be able to test that soon. Meanwhile, the development of the workstream continues, again, thanks to Infotech's David Fry and Oscar Kobar, who've given a considerable amount of time and effort to this. We now have a full monitoring stack in that on-prem IAC deployment. In the cloud, monitoring is an easier problem to solve because public cloud providers give you tools out of the box to let you monitor the health of your services. But on-prem, you have to build your own. So thanks to those guys, we now have that full monitoring stack added that lets you keep an eye on your cluster health, your application health. There's all sorts of metrics and some default off-the-shelf dashboards those guys have been building as well that you get now out of the box that allows people to get up and running quickly. We spoke before, I think, about the effort that David Fry in particular was putting in on WSO2, replacing WSO2 with a more modern cloud-native architecture gateway solution. He has told me that work is now complete. So we have Istio, which is an open source service mesh stroke Kubernetes native API gateway. So it's bye-bye WSO2. I know there's lots of people in the community who'll be having a party to celebrate that. Keycloak is now in there as an IAM solution, and components of the Ori stack are in there as well. Ori, again, is one of the big open source IAM and OAuth products. As I mentioned before, we do have one outstanding item that's a bit of a roadblock. We need to eliminate the last few remaining AWS dependencies from the control center. So just a quick explanation there for those of you that aren't familiar. The IAC, the Mojaloop IAC, is architected so there's a control center, which is a number of services which run somewhere, historically in AWS, and they enable you to create, manage, and destroy Mojaloop Kubernetes clusters in various different targets. You might create a cluster in the cloud, you might create a cluster on-prem, you might have some cloud and some on-prem, all within your organization. You manage those all through the single control center. Now, at this point, there are still some AWS services that the control center uses for DNS and IAM for the GitOps workflow itself. We need to eliminate those dependencies to enable the full air-gapped on-premise deployment. So right now, you can run the Mojaloop switch components fully on-prem, but the control center still has some cloud, so that has to run in the cloud. But our adopters and potential adopters are telling us that they want a complete air-gapped solution. So we know what we need to do, we just need some help to make it happen. We're hoping that the guys in Rwanda and a few people we've been speaking to around the community will wade into that. If I go back to my second slide, you'll see we're looking for folks with Terraform, Ansible, Kubernetes experience, or folks who are just, experienced engineers willing to learn a bit more about infrastructure and IAC to help us with that. Any help would be welcome. In the meantime, we're going to continue to iterate the installation and maintenance documentation. It's in a pretty good place at the moment for an initial start, but as we learn more, hopefully from the guys in Rwanda and a couple of other projects that are going on at the moment, we'll be iterating that documentation to keep improving it. The guys on the work stream, we're very much making ourselves available to help the guys in Rwanda. It's a very cool and important project that we're doing our best to support. So please reach out if you'd like to know more about what we're doing, get involved in any way. You can reach me on Slack. there are a couple of Slack channels that I've forgotten to put on this slide, but anybody who's on the Mojaloop Slack, just reach out in any of the general channels or something, and I'll point you in the right direction. Anybody have any questions before I hand back to Paul?
Can I make a comment, James?
Please do.
Alan, I see you're on the call. Would you have any comment to make on this, as you're probably the prime user of this workstream for the moment?
No real comment really, but other than to thank James and the IAC team to have helped us get started. There were some changes that needed to be made, but they were not that big. What we received from the team, James and the team, was very crucial for us to help us at least achieve this first milestone on the R-Switch project. So thank you very much, James and the IAC team, and we'll be happy to help James. I'll discuss this with Bonaparte, and who's also on the call, and the other people that were on the infrastructure setup, and then we'll come back to you directly on Skype on how we can participate directly on this work stream.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alain and Bonaparte. Yeah, it's great to see you here today. Thank you. Yeah, we're very, very impressed with what you guys have been doing, and we're certainly very happy to support you. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Ooh,
Okay, if there's no other comments, we will move on. Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Next, due to pressure of time, is the G2B Connect MOSIP work with Paul Baker.
Just looking for that unmute button. Thanks, guys. Let me share. I do have a presentation. There we go. Although it is a very short presentation. Namely, we've got 2 slides, intro, and then 1 slide to show the work and where we are. So we're trying in this work stream, we're trying to have a much wider community involvement. So we've had a request that goes out to the community asking for participation. This is contract work to help progress the build of this work stream. So the objectives have been outlined in Epic. So we've got an Epic on the board there, and we've got the detailed design has been uploaded into a repo on Mojaloop, and there's a link to it there. And so it's going pretty well, and there are no blockers at the moment. So, but let me get back to some of those details because I think they're important. So what we are doing in this work stream is to build a concept demonstration. We have presented the ideas and designs around those concepts before, although there's a caveat. We did change the design again. so I might give a quick summary of that change just
Please
to
do.
inform
I think it's
the rest of
important.
the community. Yeah, and the plan is to build a POC, a demonstration POC of that design. So let me, in fact, I'm now going to jump out of this presentation because I would like to show you the detailed design. So let me do that. So if we go to this detailed design link, that's the story, sorry. This is the story where we're performing the work, so you can follow along, well, the epic rather, and then we've got the detailed stories as they're being broken down and worked on by various team members or community members. And this is the epic with the design. So it's similar to what we presented in the past with a couple of small changes, although I think they're significant, which is why I would like to discuss it. In that this is starting to look very much like making use of the Mojaloop login to provide a user-controlled payment alias. And this starting to look like a standard implementation now that we could potentially leverage on top of the current the current Mojaloop. In other words, we could provide support for this centrally inside Mojaloop. Let me explain the change, because I think it's quite clever and quite interesting. In that, so in the community, we've been talking about having a payment alias for a very long time, and the power behind an alias or token alias inside Mojaloop is that we really want to give an individual user, so the clients of our clients, control as to where they can send payments. So that they could have a configured set of payments, and if they decide they want to change to a different bank account or deposit the money in a different place, they have control over that, not the participants. And that's difficult if you're handing out your banking details to each of the participants. If you then change bank accounts, you've got to go to each of the people you handed out their connection information to redirect it. So the way this would work is the user logs in with the Mojaloop and gets a unique payment token for that user. This is the same as the previous design that we presented, but what changes now is instead of then performing a login to the banking portal to show the access and then provide authorization for the account information and then link that account to the token, instead of doing that, we're going to leverage existing payment tokens already configured and set up in Mojaloop, and providing a mapping between that alias token and the DFSP, the Mojaloop payment token. So leveraging that, it's really also leveraging the trust relationship that is set up and configured between Mojaloop and the different payee or the different DFSPs connected to the scheme, and how they've configured and resolved payment tokens, which has to happen in a scheme. And often schemes start off with payment tokens that are linked to cell phone numbers or bank accounts. And then we know that is not ideal because we want rather a unique payment token for a person rather than being a payment token for an account. And this level of abstraction allows us to make that link. So I think this is a quite an important design in POC, and I'd love to sort of work it through and really prove that the concept works in this POC. So we've got a little red arrow here where we're going to be building this payment token adapter, which really adapts. It sits between the SDK or the Mojaloop connector and the core banking system integration that's already existing for many banks at the moment, and it will just adapt from the token coming in on one side to the existing payment identifier as configured in Mojaloop at the moment. So this is a reusable component that can be deployed into existing integrations, which is fantastic. But we also think that long term, we might be able to perform this mapping inside Mojaloop sort of centrally to support this more widely, in which case this component would then fall away if we were doing it centrally, and would be an even more elegant solution to this problem. But for POC to get something that's working on an existing system at the moment, we will be building this payment token adapter. So if I go back to this to what we've worked on, so we've got a detailed design in place. We've started building this payment token adapter, and we in the process of negotiating with community members and contributions to be able to build out the beneficiary central beneficiary registration portal. Sorry, got a bit tongue-tied there. And there are no blockers at the moment, and we're hoping to complete the POC this PI. Was that a good summary, Paul?
Yeah, that's good. I liked that. So we'll look forward to a demo of this at the convening then.
Yes, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Does anyone have any questions about this?
No, not a question, but if I can add to that,
Please, Sam, please.
What Paul Baker mentioned, I think it adds value to know that this design has been validated. The design that Paul Baker discussed using a sandbox that Mojaloop provided as well. So it's not that we think this is feasible only from our side. It's already been validated. So the implementation should be very straightforward. And when it has to be done at production quality, we know that it can be done and how to go about it. So thank you.
Yes, I didn't mention that. Mojaloop do supply a sandbox, and we have connected to that sandbox and checked that all the functionality works and exists, and we're getting the right responses and token IDs that we expect. So we've validated. We did that during the detailed design phase.
Oh, no, that's really good. Thank you, Paul. And this is a very important work stream in terms of particularly those countries that have a Mojaloop deployment already in place, and there are increasing the number of them, and are interested in social payments, pensions, or any other G2P type application. So this is one of those flagship work streams. So thank you. Michael, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, more of a comment actually. So one of the things that I think is interesting about the Mojaloop initiative is that it's actually an example of a different way of representing identity. So, you know, the traditional way, as we find it in things like ISO 20022 and lots of other standards, is that you include all of the information that might be needed about a party in the message itself or in the API definition itself. What we're now talking about, I think, in Mojaloop and indeed in PASS and other initiatives, is something where effectively what you're passing is a token and a direction to go and find out from somewhere else what, you know, whether this is valid information or not. And my worry, I suppose, is that by treating it as the same thing as an identifier in Mojaloop, we might be storing up trouble for ourselves later on, I guess.
Well, as you say, Mojaloop is a new way of looking at identity. It's a strongly privacy preserving mechanism, which puts a lot of control in the hands of the individual. And also, if I was feeling in one of my more cynical moods, it also puts a lot of control in the hands of whoever's operating Mojaloop. But it is a reality. This is one mechanism of dealing with that. And I think it's an important step if we are going to increasingly encounter more digital identity solutions that we require to carry out routing for, then I would say that Mojaloop is probably going to be one of the most difficult to deal with. So it puts us in a good place for working with others as well.
I mean, as I say, I just want to make sure that we are recognizing in the overall design of Mojaloop how different this way of verifying the identity of a participant is from the standard way, which is to say, it's not just the standard way for Mojaloop, but from, you know, currently for all identity establishments that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that's been talked about for a long time, and there have been pilots of similar approaches. I think there was one in Canada a few years ago, and similar things, I think, actually in the UK, but they've never taken off because for one reason or another, people don't feel the need to protect their privacy. So it's just, you know, MOSIP is perhaps leading the way on this.
Well, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. Okay, unless there are any other questions, I suggest we move on. Oh, Paul, did you want to highlight something?
I'm sharing again, yes.
Yeah.
There's a point that I glossed over, and maybe I shouldn't have, and that is step number 6 in this diagram, where we check the personal information that matches the MOSIP. Now, our current thinking is the government beneficiary management portal that's asking for this registration of a token can dictate the level of matching of the personal KYC information. Also, the recent extensions for cross-border and related Forex KYC, transport of KYC information could be leveraged to, in fact, do those checks. In other words, after a discovery call is made, if the scheme has been configured to provide a more detailed level of KYC information, they in fact can be checked against the MOSIP token of the person. So in other words, eliminating the chance that this person who's logging in as a unique MOSIP user may in fact be linking it to an account that is not theirs. So it's an interesting idea, and we're certainly exploring it in this POC. And that's slightly different to your comment, Michael, I understand.
Okay, I think we need to move on, if you don't mind. But thank you, Paul. Thank you for the comments, Michael and Sam. Our next workstream presentation is on merchant payments, another very important workstream. So Kareem, are you there? Are you able to present? Yep.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, it's a short presentation, so I'll do some recap before coming to what we are working on. So basically, I mean, our goal in this work stream is to ensure that the necessary tools for supporting the adoption of Mojaloop for merchant payments are prepared. So in PI 23, last time when we met for the convening, the major areas where we were focusing that whatever we have developed so far, we complete the standard release checklist work for that, which includes test cases, automation, and CI/CD setup, and also complete a release checklist, which was provided to us so that the components are ready for use in production. So most of the work in this so far in this work stream has been in that area. The other is that some enhancements in terms of features which we want on the merchant portal were also done. So when we actually last time presented, and this is available also in this slide deck for anyone who is looking at this presentation for the first time, that what features are already built in previous PI. So
yeah,
we have some new features which we wanted to complete so that the whole package can be downloaded, installed, and is ready to use with a Mojaloop installation, which meant that we think from a complete product perspective, so that if, for example, someone is a hub operator and they want to use this whole package, then initially the system should come up with the options to create hub admin users and set up those users, and similarly they can, through the user interface, add the DFSPs utilizing Mojaloop. So if this whole system is connected to Mojaloop, then it can, and it's in the same environment, then it can take the list of DFSPs from Mojaloop, and those who are into merchant payments or signing up merchants, they can be onboarded in this system. And their users are also created. So all these tasks, which were basic and essential tasks for completing and releasing the first version, they are completed. What I would like to highlight over here is that now there is a standard process of how we are working, that anything which comes up as a feature or a requirement, we do a requirement analysis, which is mostly a BA related work, and then a technical design, which means if there are changes in the existing APIs or any changes in the sequence diagrams or ERD, then those changes are reviewed and documented. And then development, and finally automation test cases, testing. So writing the test cases and making them part of the release. So all of these steps are being done. Couple of features which we wanted to incorporate additionally, which is that a merchant who wants to use this portal. So we had three stakeholders who are the users of these portals. One, the DFSPs, the other hub operators, and the third one, the merchants. So we designed for it, but so far we haven't been able to start the development because some developers which were working already on this project have preoccupation and they've moved on. So we are also looking for teams to develop. So I'll come to that later. Then the purpose of directly giving access to merchants was that if a merchant has been issued an alias by a DFSP and they want to change their DFSP or get access to a QR code, then all of those are readily available to them on this portal. So these features, we have documented the requirements, what needs to be done, but we are looking for community support in terms of developers. I've already got commitments from Wired-In, and IMOSys team is also here. So hopefully we'll work on these remaining features as well. But we took a conscious decision to put these as part of next release, because the other two tasks, which was packaging of the whole product in terms of documentation and creating a Docker image for it, and completing the release checklist. These were super important for us. So that is the good news, is that on this part we have completed most of the items, and some items which are remaining are related to updating documentation, which will hopefully be completed in next couple of weeks. So we are targeting that within February we should be able to publish a release. The team is working with Sam on how to get this on Mojaloop repository. So that's a work which is in progress right now. So for March 2024, our target is that this version 1 should be published in February and available on Mojaloop GitHub. And then we roll out the additional enhancements as an update. Just the caveat on that is that we need developer time commitment to contribute on this task. These are the few things which are in pipeline, which we are working on. So, I mean, I talked about few things already, but in terms of design for future, we are looking at options like bulk merchant onboarding, adding two-factor authentication on the portals, and then also see that if there are any enhancements or any tools required to support a request to pay or merchant initiated request. I mean, we haven't done the complete analysis on these parts, the request to pay part yet, as to what role this any component can play, whether something like an instant payment notification or some area where a tool is required. IMOSys team is also working these days on setting up a lab environment. So that's still a work in progress from our side. These are the teams who are working, and again, like the participation is needed from other members, especially in the development area, and also if there are people who are working in DevOps or QA, so they can also join. In the testing part, primarily on the security testing, that's an area where we need more support. And anyone, like once we publish the package, then would welcome people from community to try and give us feedback so we can put further functionality in it. So yeah, this is update from my side.
That's very, very useful. Thank you, Kareem. Very interesting. So that means that by end of February, we'll be able to demonstrate a customer initiated payment to a merchant.
Yeah.
With some, well, obviously customer with merchant registration as well.
Yeah, so our demo will look something like that. I mean, we are preparing, once the package is ready, the plan is that we publish a demo video, which shows that an adopter can download the package, set it up, and then create hub users, create DFSPs, DFSP users, those DFSPs then onboard the merchant, and then you do a transaction using those merchants. Merchant aliases, either using QR. So the whole script we are preparing that this should be able to demonstrate.
That's good. I'll be a very enthusiastic downloader and product-focused reviewer. So we'll look forward to that, Kareem, as soon as we can. Good. Does anyone have any comments for Kareem? Or questions? No? No, thank you, Kareem. I can see there is going to be further work on for version 1.1, and I can also foresee functionality for a version 2 as well. But we can have that conversation separately. At the moment, this is remarkable progress. To you, the LitSWorks team, IMOSys, thank you all very much. You've done extremely well. So thank you. Moving on, our next work stream is participation tools, and James.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Once again, this is probably going to be the shortest presentation of today because unfortunately pretty much close to zero has happened. Oh, forgive me, I left my Baby Yoda meme in there from last time. So quick reminder, workstream objectives: to foster a vibrant and diverse set of open source participation tools which remove or reduce barriers to DFSP participation in Mojaloop schemes. So maybe some of you will remember originally this workstream was focused on payment manager, but we don't want to be too prescriptive about that. Payment manager being one of many possible options, and in the spirit of fostering an open and inclusive community, we broadened the scope to include other tools, other possibilities. There's been no progress since the last review at the start of the PI. Nobody's come forward to participate in this work stream, despite the calls out that we made. So it's obviously not a priority for the community, which is okay. I think, speaking as a Mojaloop Foundation person, I'm not especially worried about that, because I do see the work streams like FX, for example, are doing maintenance work on the payment manager participation tool anyway, as part of their development efforts to support their work on the core. Please, though, we do need input, mostly at this point, I think, to figure out where the gaps are, if we're missing something. If during conversations folks are having out in the market with potential adopters or users of Mojaloop, you're coming across things that sound like participation barriers, then please bring them back to this work stream. We'd be very happy to hear real feedback. We are still focused on two main areas. Removing the barriers as far as regulation, use case support and cost goes. And from a technical perspective, reducing complexity, time and cost of system integration for DFSPs joining Mojaloop schemes. And also, once those guys have joined a Mojaloop scheme, they're supporting their ongoing operations, removing cost from as much of that process as possible. So trying to provide tools that come out of the box with support for monitoring and managing the security of the connections, data archiving, etc. All of those good things. Quick reminder of the current landscape. Is Payment Hub EE from MIFOS. As far as I know, there's not been any development on Payment Hub EE. It is out there. It does support the FSP IOP API as it stands currently. There's Payment Manager and there's the SDK Mojaloop connector. So these three options are out there at the moment, but we need more product input really. We need guidance from the market on where to go with these things. So please do give us your thoughts, if you can spare the time and the bandwidth to think about this problem. It is an important area for Mojaloop. If the reality is that DFSPs find it expensive, time-consuming, and difficult to join Mojaloop schemes, it gets in the way of our mission, which is to get those level 1 principles that are embodied in Mojaloop-based payment schemes out there in the market, serving real customers, those people we're trying to help ultimately. So it is worthy of your time and attention. Please, let's not let this one fall by the wayside. That's all I really have to say. Does anybody have any comments, questions for me at this point?
No, that would
Okay.
appear not, James.
Yeah,
I think your comment about this not being a priority is ringing true, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not a priority until it becomes
Exactly.
crunching.
Suddenly it will become urgent and I need it tomorrow.
It will. And I'm thinking of the adoptions that are in the pipeline at the moment. Yeah, as much as we're trying to preempt some of the requirements, real market knowledge is what we need at this point. So thank you.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, James.
Thanks.
The next presentation is on next generation settlement, Tiger Beetle, and that would be Jason Brewer, but I can see that Jason isn't on the call. So we'll have to catch up with Jason separately. So in that case, we move on directly to the core team, and I'd ask Sam to present on that, if you don't mind, Sam.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. This will be a short deck. Paul, can you please confirm you can see this?
Yes.
Yeah, so either Paul, or I could have presented this, but Paul had to leave, so I'll do the whole presentation. For those of you who've been following Mojaloop, so this falls under the quality product, and there are some usual tasks that we have to do here, such as supporting existing implementers, supporting deployment done by community members, making sure that the documentation is up to date, and essentially, in a way, not all issues, but some critical issues. This is kind of a catch-all mechanism. But this PI, there are several items that we wanted to work on. One of those was the automation of steps involved in Mojaloop. So Mojaloop release, I'll go to a story later on if required, but it involves around 20 to 25 tasks around generating release notes, making sure there's a release candidate that uses latest versions in most cases of all the services involved in Mojaloop core, testing them on various AWS environments, and making a Mojaloop release. And after that, testing with the downstream implementation like Miniloop or IAC. For example, using the IAC scripts, taking the Mojaloop latest release and testing that it works. So that's the release process, and it usually takes a bit of time. And as Mojaloop evolves and matures, we want to also automate parts of that so that this cycle becomes easier. And while there are still some manual intervention or manual steps involved, we want to automate steps possible. For example, I'll go to the story on that later, but Stephen Odirai from core team is working on a story that would essentially generate a draft pull request, which currently we do that manually. Like one of the team members takes all the files, updates the version numbers, make sure the correct image versions are used. We look at what the upgrade should be, and once that is done, there's a pull request, then that is deployed, tested, those kind of things. For some of those automation is possible. For some, we still have to review that manually because we want to know which services we are using. So this is work in progress, but the goal is that we want to use this automation for the next Mojaloop release. Paul has a name for that already, but the version number will be either 15.30 or V16. We'll make a determination of that once this automation is done and once we have a release candidate ready. But I'm looking forward to that because that includes the enhancements done as part of the workstream. So that's in the workstream objectives number 3 here. This includes the enhancements done under the performance workstream, not done by this team, but the performance team. And it's already included in the main branches, tested. Some of those include the batching changes, changes to the coding service, fixes to instrumentation and metrics, those kind of things. So all of those are ready. But once the automation is done, and there are some fixes pending, for example, on coding service, there is one issue that's actively in progress. These kind of things. Once those are done, we'll have a release candidate and we'll proceed with the release. So that is one side of things. There are also some technical that we addressed in Mojaloop Acacia, which was Mojaloop 15.20. We wanted to get that release out because most of the core services updates were completed, but there was still some supporting services like, for example, some components of the testing toolkit and others that were not upgraded previously, which are not part of the Mojaloop platform to be sure, but we want to upgrade them as well. And after post Acacia, these were upgraded and those will come out with the next Mojaloop release. And there are some other enhancements as well in the form of test scripts. And outside of these, again, on the IAC, there was some focus items, this PI. Most of the work was focused on supporting on-prem deployment of Mojaloop, like setting up affinities and control plane, regarding on-prem, setting up control plane on-prem, which James was covering earlier. but also some of the work that was done by David and Oscar in Fitix team in replacing the gateway. So that will come out with the next IAC release as well. So right now they're working on some pending some things that would help us to get it to release quality. Support for finance portal is one of those things. So once that is done and we have a new Mojaloop release, we'll have an accompanying IAC release that that would enable us to deploy that Mojaloop. So that's what's coming. And this is the progress here. I've mentioned it's not a roadblock as such, but important to note that the team that is currently funded to do core maintenance and releases, that funding is we've been informed that it's going to end soon, as early as February. So we need some continuity there. So the details are there in the deck. There is a story here. Let me go to that story quickly to show some of the aspects that I've discussed here. So if you see some of the acceptance criteria here involves using Git actions for release automation. So this would take the application versions across Mojaloop for the services that we specify, latest versions currently. We're also looking for enhancements there. And then it creates a draft PR. So it creates this branch, and there's also acceptance criteria around deploying that onto a dev environment so that we can validate that. So this is in review. I think Steven is mostly done with that. You can see the progress here. So generating the release notes, detecting breaking changes. It also creates a snapshot on the test collections repository and deploys the release candidate branch code base or charts based on the release candidate branch on an AWS based dev environment. So most of it is there. This I can't tell you how much effort this will save. Probably this time that we spent would be reduced tremendously. I think we were looking at 2 or around that 2 to 4 week period earlier. This might reduce it to 1 week if we have our requirements set, meaning what are the services we want to go into the next release. If we are finalized on that, then this would give us huge amount of savings in terms of effort. Let me go back to the presentation for a minute. Any questions in the meantime? Thanks. And this is like that pipeline schedule that we have 14.11 till 15.20, which is Mojaloop Acacia, the current release. And we are going to, there's a release that's going to come soon. Is it Meerkat, Paul, that you confirmed the name?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Meerkat, the version number will be 15.30 or V16 based on whether there is any breaking change for hub operators or not. And this is the summary of what goes in there, performance enhancement. So I'm very eagerly looking forward to that, to the main updates there, performance related fixes, including batching, and the IC changes, which will simplify the gateway side of things. Unless there are any questions, Paul, that's all I have for.
I just wanted one other thing I wanted you to comment on, which is the role of the core team as we migrate over the next, I don't know, 6 months, a year to the vNext code base. How the core team will take on that role.
From where I see, actually, core team is the team that's dealing with Mojaloop core for any case for that matter. So if we use vNext code base as our Mojaloop release, as we say, Mojaloop is there's only one Mojaloop. So behind the scenes, this team, in my opinion, should be taking care of whatever is Mojaloop at the time. So when vNext becomes Mojaloop, then this core team should be moving to support that code base. Yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think that we will need to bring on some of the vNext development team into the core team as well. Simply to bring the knowledge in. So, sure. Okay, thank you, Sam. Unless there are any questions from anyone else, I suggest we move on. Okay. We're doing pretty well on time. The next one is performance characterization, and that's you again, James. Sorry.
Jolly good, thank you. My final slot for the day, I believe.
It is indeed.
Just get my stuff together. Share one final slide deck. All right, so performance characterization. This workstream has quite a number of complex objectives. They're in this deck. This deck will be shared after the review today. There's, like I said, there's quite a few. There's 3 slides here on the workstream objectives, but the highlight, the number one priority is to find out how fast the system is. If it doesn't meet our baseline of 1000 TPS, sustained for 1 hour with less than 1% of transfers taking more than 1 second, with no unexpected errors, durable for an hour, then we need to take immediate action to rectify that. So work is continuing on that first priority. At the end of the previous PI, I think we posted some updates saying that we're actually very close to that 1000 TPS, even on-prem as well. The latest changes are that some position batching on fulfillments have been recharacterized. So that was a tweak, a performance fix made to position updates and position handler to implement a new batching mechanism, well, to fix an existing batching mechanism that had some issues for a very long time. That's fixed and is being recharacterized. The quote service has had a refactor for a couple of reasons, actually, not necessarily primarily with performance in mind. That the quote service has been split into a number of asynchronous message processes following the same pattern as the central ledger. So now the architecture of quotes and central ledger are in line. There has been I believe 14% was the number that was shared with me recently, 14% performance improvement on the quotes as a result of that refactor. But it actually has a more, I think, a more significant product benefit, which is that now that process of the Mojaloop hub, the switch receiving and passing on quote requests, is that pipeline is now interceptable by fraud and anti-money laundering type systems, whereas previously we had to intercept transfers during the transfer process. We can catch them earlier now in the 3 phases of the Mojaloop transfer. So during the agreement phase, we can route messages out to fraud and AML platforms and have them intercede. So it gives us some more flexibility in that area, which I think is a general good benefit. But focusing back on performance, the SDK has now been added to the characterization. Some performance improvements have been made there. Performance dashboards have been added to the IAC. So again, I mentioned some dashboards in the on-prem presentation earlier. So there's a performance dashboard now as well that you get out of the box. And the ISE is also being tweaked to include the performance testing framework. So Mojaloop users will now be able to deploy the performance testing framework into their test clusters and run their own performance tests. All very useful to understand how your particular Mojaloop deployment is performing and how that changes over time as you add and tweak use cases and features. So again, I know we've said that our anticipated progress, the last time we presented this, we were hoping to have all 3 transfer stages tested and quick fixes done and new figures, but you know, as is fairly typical, resource allocations and available time being limited, we're pushing that progress back out to the end of the PI still. Roadblocks, well, we don't have any roadblocks as such, but we could always use more help. And I'm going to sound like a stuck record, keep asking everybody for more and more help. I won't say too much about that. You've all heard it before. Please, if you're able and you're interested in doing some help with the performance workstream, please reach out, get involved. Anybody with any infra or Mojaloop core experience, anyone that's done any similar types of performance testing on bare metal would be welcome. Okay, I'll skip over these priorities. Priority 2, eventually I think we get to priority 2, adding performance testing in our CI and CD pipelines. So as we make changes to the code, we get a feeling of the impact on overall system performance those changes will make. It's an important step, I think, in evolution of the development process that we operate against Mojaloop. So not just focusing on whether we've broken any particular functionality, we can also understand how our changes affect the overall throughput and performance of the system. That's what we'll try and get to next. There's a quick summary of progress this PI. That just duplicates what was on that first slide. So thank you very much, everybody. There's a Slack channel if you want to get involved. Perf scale benchmarking. That's a public channel. Anyone can join that. Otherwise, please reach out. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I think, did I mention somewhere in here, there is a Git. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so all the performance test artifacts are on GitHub in a public repo, ML perf characterization. Go and take a look at that if you're interested. All the test configurations, the results are all there for anybody to come and scrutinize. Please feel free. Anybody have any questions before we move on?
Any questions, anyone? No?
Okay, final words then are to thank the guys that have been involved in this work stream. So far, Infotex guys, thank you. Your donation of your time and effort and knowledge and skills has been very gratefully received. We're in a good place with performance for Mojaloop. The VNow code base right now is looking very, very solid performance-wise.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think that's the message out of this for me. There's been a lot of work done, and we have now a very solid, highly performant VNow code base, which can meet the needs of any of the deployments that we are currently looking at. So it's really good news.
Indeed, we're very confident that we'll be able to cope with the needs of everybody in our current adoption pipeline without breaking a sweat. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think Sam mentioned in his presentation from the core team that these performance improvements, the tweaks and the fixes that are being made as part of this work stream, they are finding their way through into the Mojaloop releases. So keep your eyes open for the items in the release documentation. You'll see information on which performance fixes are coming through with each release. But as time goes by and the new releases get made, the performance is steadily improving. But as I say, if you want to take something away from this, approximately 1,000 TPS is what we're hitting right now.
Perfect. 1,000 TPS was always our objective. So yeah, that's really good news.
Yeah.
Thank you, James, and thank you to the whole team behind that. Okay, we have one more workstream report today, and that is platform quality and security, which is led by Sam. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Paul. Let me share this deck again. I'd like to say again, it's a short presentation, but there are some very, I would say, good updates here. Some interesting ones, some news that we are sharing for the first time with the community. We did not have a dedicated team as such for this, but we had a few things in mind, and we had volunteers from one organization, or Ponzi Network or a Scilab team who wanted to do a security assessment on Mojaloop. And we broke it down into several things. First on the backend operation side of things with regard to finance portal, and then on transaction security and stress testing. On stress testing and transaction security, we wanted to hold off, especially on hitting the system with load, because we knew that our current, at least when the sandbox was given to the team, it was using an IAC-based sandbox on Mojaloop version 15.10. That was the version prior to Mojaloop Acacia. Acacia is 15.20. And what we thought was at the time, with the performance stream being active, it makes sense to have that once the performance fixes are done. And also with the new IC changes, that makes the deployment and usage of gateway more easier with Istio. It makes sense to do those kinds of testing then. So right now we have a report on the finance portal side of things. The report itself is not being shared with the community as such, but there are a couple of updates from the report that I'd like to share here. Along with that, there's also a flurry of activity here. You probably saw some pull requests from James, at least 2 of them, around coordinated vulnerability disclosure. Another authored by Paul and James regarding the cybersecurity architecture as part of the work done for the project. So these are what I'm going to cover today as part of this platform quality and security. We had some objectives around hardening of module releases that would involve making sure that all the audit issues, vulnerabilities raised by our tools that we already use, like SNCC and others, are addressed. We follow through on the security assessment, and we also document Mojaloop standards. And there are also some maintenance tasks that we identified, and I'll cover those in the upcoming slides. So the progress being that we have some of those are completed, some of those are in progress, like in NPR stage, and others we are adding to the backlog to be covered in the upcoming PIs as well. So some of the observations shared on finance portal by the team, again, thanks to Ponzi Network Scilab Africa team. We had a couple of security experts from the team. Lena was, I think, their project manager. And we had Wambi and just a second. Give me 1 second here. So anyway, I want to share just a summary from that instead of sharing the report here. But the essence being that I'm going back, being that it's mostly positive. There is nothing of concern at the moment. And there are some follow-up actions which we need to do anyway that are part of normal Mojaloop maintenance. And it's good to be reminded of that, and also to find out that we're already following the best practices. Paul, can you please confirm you can see my screen again?
Yeah, can see it.
Okay. As far as I can tell, we have this work done by 2 of the team members, Juniors and Wambui, and Alina managing the project. So thanks to them. But that is the summary of the outcome, that we are following the best practices on authorization and authentication. They've tried several scripts and tools to go for elevation of privilege, but none of them succeeded. We're also given a good certificate on input validation and sanitization of incoming messages, and using the best practice on security headers and also session management. The tokens being revoked once session ends, those kind of things. The recommendations were to keep the services up to date. We already do this during some cycles like node upgrade cycles and during releases. But again, it's a good reminder to make sure that our underlying dependencies, the third-party dependencies especially, are also up to date. Especially those where there are known security vulnerabilities. And another one was to ensure proper configuration. When tools like GraphQL that are part of our finance portal are deployed in production, we need to disable a few features. So there's another reminder regarding that to set those config parameters to disabled when used in production, like a GraphQL playground, and also to reformat our error messages properly. So we'll have some backlog items in the coming days to address those. But overall, it was a positive report and something I think that the team developed and Mojaloop company itself can be glad about. That was the primary update, and then apart from that, there are a few other updates as well. I think this the platform quality and security is taking good shape. In this, we already have an alias, a security at mojaloop.io, to which collaborators, contributors can report security vulnerabilities to. That's an alias which is being monitored for security, and we have a security team in that distribution list. And you already seen this guidance around moving from alpha beta to release quality. This is on Mojaloop Slack as well, and we shared that briefly in the DA earlier today. But there are other two important things that I want to highlight today. One is the Mojaloop's coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. So James raised this pull request. It's a work in progress, but it's out for review. And that will be the Mojaloop Foundation stance around the vulnerability disclosure, what the contributors cannot do, should do, and can do as well, and what our responsibilities, timelines will be there. Please have a look at that. And also the cybersecurity architecture that was shared earlier, that was developed as part of the Kome server. I think once these are in our main branches, it should give us good guidance and outlines around following security best practices. So I'm glad that we're able to have this. These were like, we didn't envision some of these at the beginning of the PI, but we still have these, and I'm glad that we're able to get to this place. James, anything you want to add on that?
No, not really. Thank you, Sam. I think you covered everything.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a more detailed list of objectives, but does anyone have any questions regarding this platform quality and security?
No, I was just really pleased to see the report when you were talking about it the other day. It's positive. It's good. I think it's an endorsement of all the work that's been done over the, well, since the inception of Mojaloop, making sure that it is a secure, reliable base on which to build schemes and services. So yeah, it's really good. I did want to know where you think this workstream will go over the remainder of the PI and into the next PI.
Thanks, Paul. It's a good question. I mean, we do have some volunteers to do the testing on the transactional side of things and also stress testing. But it only really makes sense for us once we have the new Mojaloop release and the IAC release, especially, because that will use the new structure that we want adopters to use in production moving forward with Istio and finance portal, and some of our upgraded services as well with the performance enhancements. So at least my plan at this stage is that my thinking is that once we have the release, we'll re-engage with the Scilab team and then start testing on the transactional side, essentially the FSPOP API and any other API exposed to the outside, and then also look at the stress testing side of things. So those two things I think we should pursue. But it needs some confirmation regarding resources. We need to use our AWS sandbox again. So we need approval for allocation of that. And we need to finalize our agreement with the teams as well, Scilab team, to do that. So that's on those two aspects, the security aspects of stress testing and transaction security. But the others, I think this PI, I'm hoping we should be able to close these PRs, especially the one around invariance as well, I think sets the high level, and some of those are security related. So those PRs once closed that the James has open on documentation repo, I think will give us good guidance. It'll be good to have those closed by the end of this PI. And once we have the Mojaloop release and IAC release, can continue the next steps. I also wanted to add, Paul, some of the guidance around release quality involves things like seemingly unrelated to security, but definitely adds value on security side. For example, having code owners and protected main branches definitely helps us from any unwanted commits onto Mojaloop repositories. So those are some of the things that are in progress, especially on vNext code base. And those are something that we want to get done before doing significant feature development there as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sam. Has anyone else got any comments? No? Okay, fine. Thank you, Sam. That was a good presentation. That's the end of our presentations today. We've had a very interesting set of reports out from the various work streams. The only one we're missing was next-gen settlement, and I will chase up with Jason after this call to try and get a report on that. But overall, I will share the recording of this session, and I'll be asking the various presenters to share their presentations, and I'll put them in a single resource for anyone to look at. So with that, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you those of you who stuck it out for the full 2 hours. And speak to you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.